morning and welcome back to Early Riser Workshop. On an earlier video I showed you how I made plywood bats using my router and a trammel. Although that worked, it was a little cumbersome. I think it'll be a lot easier to do the same thing on the bandsaw using a jig to cut circles of any diameter. I'm going to show you how I make the jig and use it next. You know, one of the features I really like about this Grizzly table saw is that you can slow the speed down, and that's what I'm about to do to cut this aluminum TTrack to use as the miter bar. Next, I'll use a drill press to drill a series of holes along the edges to fasten the edging to the top. I've replaced the drill bit with a countersink bit, and now we'll finish it off. Well, let's flip it over and put on the TTrack, being used as the guide. In this case, we're going to use a number 6 by 1/2 inch screws. I'm going to put them in by hand because they're really a delicate thread into this particle board. The ideal location for this groove is for the front edge of the blade to be lined up perfectly in the center line of the TTrack. So I'm going to use my carpenter square to slowly slide it until I've reached the perfect position, and then mark it. Our next step is going to be to put that groove in the top where we marked it here. I've clamped a jig to the base plate, which is nothing more than a couple of strips of hardboard set at exactly 3/4 of an inch apart, and they're screwed to a couple of cleats that are clamped to the edges. With some double-sided tape, this little jig is completely secure and ready for me to use the router using a 1/2 inch mortising bit, which has a bearing, and the bearing, when I plunge into the cut, will ride along the inside of the jig. I'll run one pass and then plunge deeper to the final depth. Well, I wanted to make sure that that was right on, so I'm glad that step is done. This is a TTrack that's going to go into the slot, and it's a tight fit, but I think as I use it, it'll loosen up, but it certainly won't have any slop. So the next step for us is to put the bottom cleat, which was this piece of plywood, and I had cut a 45-degree on one edge, and that's there to work with the cleat system. Next, we're going to locate and drill a hole for this insert, and that'll accommodate this nut and bolt combination that will work as a fine adjustment for the blade position. Yeah, I've marked the location here where I want the hole to go, and we'll just go ahead and drill a hole now. Next, I put the threaded insert on the end of the bolt, and I'll just do this by finger tight to begin with, and then I'll use the wrench. Nut and bolt out. Okay, with the insert in place, I'll reach inside and put this in. From behind this forward, then this bolt will engage the fence and stop the jig from going any farther, and the blade remains halfway through the groove. So it's safe now to take the cleat and the clamps off the other side. Now we have a consistency of the setting that will ensure that every time I use that blade and the jig with this setting, that the blade middle, or the edge of the blade, will be in the middle of the slot. By using the TTrack with the T-bolt, we can drop the stem into the hole and then put a star handle underneath, and that allows us to tighten the bar in any position, allowing for any diameter. So loose, it moves in and out. Give it a couple of turns and it won't move. It's exactly what we want. So the next step is to put a pin near the end. And I did this mock-up by using an 1/8 inch diameter machine screw and a couple of nuts on the inside. So I'm going to do the same process on our project piece. The time has come to give this a try. I just taken this piece of scrap. I marked an X in the middle of what largest diameter, which would be a 6-inch circle. I'm just going to drill a hole in the middle, 1/8 inch diameter. I'll tighten the bar underneath with the knob. I'll back the jig off the blade. Put the material on, and now this is the first time we're going to do this, so we're going to turn the saw on and cut the circle. There we have it. Well, here's our circle, measuring 5.5 inches in diameter. I would call this jig a success. And if you go to my website, earlyriserworkshop.com, you can download a bill of material with all of the dimensions for building this jig. One of the features I really like is at the end of the day, I can break this all down and take the bar off. And now that my bandsaw's on wheels, I can roll it out of the way. Take the jig off and hang it up out of the way. All in all, I'm extremely happy and pleased. Thank you for watching. Have fun and stay safe.